Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Welcome to today's live stream. It is Cody, your Caped Crusader. We're here with our good friend. I did it again, dude. I did it once more. Chris Michael
there you go.
of Hombrewed Comics. And we're here talking about Intestinal Fortitude, a D&D Superhero Adventure Story. Issue number, you said it was 6?
Yes.
Issue number 6. So how are you? Welcome to the stream and tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to come talk about Dungeons and Dragons and comic books. A little bit about me. I got into comic book creating late 2019, released the first book in 2020, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. So we've released 5 books prior to this. This is our 6th entry. It is issue number 5. A little confusing that issue 0, counting sucks. I'm not good at math. We'll put it that way. But right now we are releasing our first chapter. So the 6th entry in the series does close out the first chapter of the story. It's a fun, energetic, tongue-in-cheek adventure story. It's a fun ride. That's what the feedback I always get is, wow, your book's fun. So
yeah. So the creation of this is definitely different from anything I think I've ever heard about. It's created from an actual D&D campaign. So what goes into that? How are you able to play the campaign and then craft a story, and let alone a comic around it?
Prior to this Kickstarter campaign, no one really asked me that question, and I have gotten that question so much that I decided the other day I'm going to put a big thing on our website discussing it, because I didn't know it was that cool until everyone's like, oh wow, how do you do that? And it's a lot of fun for me writing wise, because I go in and I create the sessions. I'm the dungeon master, and for people that don't, it sounds like the guy that wears a cloak and I'm all creepy, but no, we play virtually. Usually we roll out of bed Sunday mornings and we'll get online, and I create scenarios. So, hey guys, this is the setting you're in. This is the situation you're in. What do you do? And we go from there. I have a story board written. So I have these events as this cause and effect kind of thing. Generally, I create closed situations for myself to see what they do, because I learned really early on as a DM that if I had this big plan, that they would screw it up. And they did. And that's what you see in the comic book in the very early parts, is they kept screwing everything up. And my character is the DM, and in the book you see me as like the CEO or the commander of their team.
What's the name of your character in the book?
I play many characters, but right now you'll see me mainly as Commander Richter is my DM insert for the moment, or Sebastian Shaw. Those 2 characters are like my main DM characters, because they're the guys that say, hey, here's a mission for you that we want you to go on.
Any meaning behind the names for them?
No, actually. So I found out Sebastian Shaw is actually a Marvel character afterward, and that was just random. I did a random name generator,
and you're kind of like, what are the odds of this? Like,
I didn't think about it until issue 1 shipped, and I'm reading it, and I was like, wait a minute, Sebastian Shaw, isn't that like Black King or something? And it had been a long time since I read the Marvel stuff, and I was like, I think he's in Marvel. I'm like, but there's no, but outside the name, and Shaw is so one of my boss's names is Shaw also. So it's funny because I have him now in a book, and I'm not very nice to him in the book. So
oh man, has he ever read the book?
Well, we distribute through him, so yeah, he probably never read it. He probably doesn't care. He's too busy of a man to worry about that stuff.
He probably would read it and be like, oh man, this dude.
Yeah. Hey, next performance review, we're gonna talk. But it'd be fitting, because that's kind of how, now that I think about it, how Shaw is in the book. It's very, oh wow, I didn't even plan that, and I actually started before I even started the job.
Hopefully, hey, if you're watching, we like you, Shaw. No worries.
Yeah, you're great. But so Richter was actually based off of a guy that I used to work with when I did home remodeling and construction. I worked with a guy who was a military vet, and he was really tough-skinned, but you knew somewhere deep down in there was this nice guy, and eventually that, as I annoyed the crap out of him while we were working together, he eventually like showed that cool side of himself. And later on in the book, you see Richter and Caliber create this kind of friendship. They both like guns, so there's a few times where the guys walk into see Richter, and he's pulled up some gun. He's like, Caliber, look at this gun I'm gonna buy. And it shows like their kind of
what a fitting name as well, Caliber.
Well, yeah, that's Brad. So I don't create these characters and I thought so when the thought process came, D&D comic book, D&D came first. The session was the idea first. I never really intended it to be a comic book. We just hadn't played D&D in about 10 years. I had this idea for Superhero D&D, and I pitched it to him like, hey, tomorrow you wake up with superpowers. What do you do? And the first session was just so fun. And this is something, I've played D&D for a long time. And I've played with a lot of different groups, and every group is like, oh man, this should be a cartoon. This is so funny. This should be this. And I was just the one idiot that decided, hey, I'm going to do this. And I have no idea what I'm doing.
So what's it like finally? Because I playing D&D in a group setting has to be awesome, but the fact that you can play it digitally whenever you want to has to be nice too. How has that made like improvements to the game for you with Corona being such an issue over the last year or so?
So I won't lie, when Corona first hit and we were going full remote, I thought we would stop playing. I thought that would be the death of the campaign, because years ago, we all lived in Boone, North Carolina. We would get together every Sunday. We would play D&D, eat pizza, and that's what we did for 2 years. I moved away first, and remote technology was what it is now that it was 10 years ago. So we actually tried to use Xbox Live with the video camera to
make it work.
We tried. It just never took off. We wound up, like I said, we didn't play for like 10 years because people moved away. People were doing other things. But when Corona hit, I got Discord, and I was like, hey, let's just try this. So one session in, and as things started opening up, later on, I asked the guys, do you want to play in person? A few of them were like, yeah. But, a couple of our guys live an hour and a half away. And they were like, I'd much rather just roll out of bed in my pajamas,
Yeah.
And we've been able to keep the campaign live, going on. We started this thing, late 2018, early 2019. And we're, almost 4 years, we've been playing the same campaign.
So,
which, in D&D terms, that's impressive.
what I guess struck you as to making a comic out of this? What was the defining moment where you're like, you know what, that's it, we're pulling the trigger, we're doing this now, and I'm doing it with this group?
I did it at first because I was really bored, and we were in our group chat talking about this first session for a month. We just continually talked about some of the stuff that happened or how exciting it was. And at the time I was unemployed and I had a lot of extra time. So I just started drawing. Not that I was very good at it, but I just started drawing. And I made the book. Well, once the book was done and I showed some people, my wife was the first person that actually saw the book outside our group. And she looked at it and was like, it's okay. And I said, well, I can't just have it's okay. I just can't.
How can I make this better?
Right. And so that's what really motivated me to make something better. But then when I started making things better, I realized, well, hey, I could handle line art. I really don't understand coloring that well. And so I got someone else to color it. Well, that costs money. Mm-hmm. So how do you get money? You go to Kickstarter, and then you have to ask people for money. So now you have to have a product. And it just became this snowball effect. And then, we wound up, I think the first book, once I put it on the website, it was like 150 copies went out. And I was like, wait a minute, that many people care about our D&D campaign? So that just kind of triggered something into me that, hey, we might have something cool here that people want to read. And now, 6 issues in, we've consistently funded. We've, the website surprisingly does very well even after the Kickstarters. And we've gotten a lot of fan art. I get messages. People ask,
man, fan art has to be awesome.
Most of the stuff that you see on my wall is actually everything except for one cover back there was drawn by somebody else.
That's so cool.
I like surrounding myself with other people's art. It's really inspiration.
I love your guys' shirt. Your shirt design is awesome.
I gotta make a new one. We decided last night. I gotta make one that says "Crit." Do you like D&D? Because when I do Comic-Cons, that's my pitch. Is like, hey, do you like D&D? It's a really good conversation starter because someone will either say, oh yeah, I love D&D, and then I can go into that pitch. Or I've never really played. It's like, well, do you like superheroes then? Yeah, I like superheroes. Cool. Do you like, dumbasses? Yeah, they're so much fun. Do you like Deadpool? Do you like Peacemaker? Now that Peacemaker's a thing.
How'd you feel about Peacemaker?
Well, I loved Peacemaker, but I was also mad at Peacemaker because Vigilante is almost my character caliber to a T. But Caliber does have a power set, so it makes him a little different. And,
oh, man.
Actually, so Brad, who plays Caliber in real life, he calls me up and he goes, so we might have a problem. He goes, I watched some of the Peacemaker stuff and they've got even my dialogue in there.
Yeah, I can almost picture like your voice too. Your voice sounds pretty similar to him.
I love the character, not gonna lie. I love Peacemaker. I think that was unexpected and shows us that not everything we want needs to be a comic book, and some of the things needs to be a show.
Oh man, him and his whitey tighties with the vibrators singing in it.
Right, like it was very unexpected, but I'm actually bummed we don't have the show anymore. Right?
Yeah, we're greenlit for season 2 though.
Good. I was very excited to hear that even before the season ended. And what I loved the most about that was, it was never even supposed to be made. This was just something that he started working on and as a joke pitched to Warner Brothers, and they were like, I love it. And it reminds me a lot about this, my book, because it was something that was supposed to be a joke between friends, and a way for me to keep them interested in the campaign was to hold it. I'm a salesperson by trade, and I know that to get people to do things and buy into your stuff, you give them a physical item.
Yeah.
And so, nothing better than saying like, hey, here's a comic book of your characters doing the stupid shit that you just did. And like being able to take that home and go, oh man, remember when this happened, right? There's just some emotional value to it. And so that was the original goal. And then once it became more than that, it really drove the campaign home. Really issue 5 it's the 6th issue, but number 5, right? So this issue, Intestinal Fortitude, when it came out was when I had originally released or started working on issue 1. And issue 0 was, wasn't even a thing then. It was just issue 1. And this was when they first came in and realized, well, hey, our campaign means a little bit more than just us playing D&D now. So you see them really role play their characters well. As a DM, I started using some different tactics to be a little bit more creative and allow more creative freedom for the team. And everything just meshed very well.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to ask for anyone listening, because I know myself, I'm really not that well versed in it. With D&D, like what goes into it, like the type of game, like just a quick breakdown of it, for those listening who have no idea what it is.
So you have a piece of paper, and mind you, the guys I play with now are the ones that got me into D&D to begin with. The first time they asked me, I was a DM for GameStop, a district manager, and they were like, hey, you should come play D&D with us. And I said, guys, I'm nerdy, but not that nerdy. Okay. You know, I still got to maintain some semblance of my manhood over here. I was like, no, I'm sorry. And they were like, no, it's not what you think. And I was like, guys, I don't want to get dressed up. I don't want to go in the basement, and I don't want to pretend to be somebody. You know, it just doesn't seem like fun.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, you don't really do that. It's just, and they asked me, well, do you like Star Wars? You know, the video game. You know, Knights of the Old Republic. I was like, yeah, it's an awesome game. You like Mass Effect? Yeah, I love that game. Okay, well, that is D&D, but in digital format. What do you mean? Oh, well, you know, everything, the computer just does your rolls for you. So it really made me think. I'm like, oh, okay, well, then I can do this. So I have a piece of paper, and I write all my stuff out, and, you know, you roll to make this character, and it's all random generated. So,
and that's like the RNG aspect of video games, basically. Is
exactly.
The roll. Yeah.
It's all, you know, you roll for your stats, right? So you either have good luck or bad luck making your character, and you use those stats to kind of build this idea of what you want your character to be. And the campaign that really got me was when we started Mass Effect. We had done a campaign first that lasted 5 sessions, which I absolutely hated. I don't know what's the age range on your show? Like, cussing allowed?
Oh yeah, you can cuss.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay. So that campaign ended with me, because I hated it so much. The DM kept putting us in bad situations, and I was like, this is a terrible way to get me into D&D. I had one of my players, I convinced him to daze the big giant monster. I had another player block the monster in, and then I got behind it, and I got as big as I could, and I fucked it until it died. The DM gave me this ability to where I can manipulate.
He's like, what are you doing?
Oh, the DM actually, I called this move the mind fuck, because one character was able to control anyone's mind. He was a psionic character, so he could mind control anything. And then he gave me this ability because I was the only one at the time that worked out. So he's like, "Oh, you're the guy that works out. You can control body." And I was like, "Well, give me an idea of what do you mean?" "Well, you can shapeshift. You can turn your body in. You know, you're like Mr. Fantastic meets He-Man meets, you know."
And you're like, "Man, I'm gonna get super big and fuck everything I see."
Well, every time I thought of something cool, they wound up making me do stupid stuff. Like I had sex with pancakes in that, and the third thing, the guy that does mind control made me love pancakes so much that it was like American Pie for pancakes. And I was like, "This is stupid. I hate this. I really don't like the DM didn't give us any freedom to have fun." And so I just used my own, you know, I guess I'm a little bit, I'm a person, I just get my way all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go in and I said, okay, logically, you know, Brad can mind control stuff, right? He goes, yeah. I'm like, all right, cool. Brad, you need to mind control this thing into just a daze. I want it to be completely dazed for a turn. And so Brad's like, yeah, I can do that. And I lean over to him and I'm like, I'm going to fuck it. And he goes, what? I'm like, we're going to call this move the mind fuck, and we're going to continue this throughout the campaign. And so I didn't tell the DM what I was doing. I said, all right, well, I want to use my turn to move behind it. He said, okay. I was like, so I should have an advantage here because now I'm behind it. It can't see me and it's dazed, right? He goes, yeah. Because if I just said what I wanted to do, he would tell me, no, you can't do that. And that was how the whole campaign went. No, you can't do that. And so I was like, all right, so I can do this, right? I can get behind it. Yes. And you said I have power of body, so I can get to the size of it, right? He's like, yeah, you can grow in size. I'm like, cool. I want to get as big as it. All right, cool. And I want to get right up behind it. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're right up behind it. He's thinking I'm gonna wrestle it or something. I'm like, well, I'm gonna put my hands right on its hips. And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, and I want to put my dick in, and I want my dick to get as big as it possibly can till it comes out the other end. I want to impale this thing.
And he's like, oh man, my logic's killing me right now.
Right. And he looks at me and he goes, what? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, angels fall from the sky and destroy the entire party, and the game is over. And he closes his book, he packs up his stuff, and he walks out of the apartment, and we never saw him again.
I mean, to be honest with you though, that dude did sound kind of boring to play with. How are you going to tell me no on everything I want to do? Why am I going to want to keep coming back?
the reason you play D&D is to have fun and do the things. I do want. My wife just put in there that I want to LARP. Yes, I do want to LARP. Now,
LARPing looks fun. It does, dude.
10 years ago, no, I wouldn't. But now that I've been playing D&D this long, it sounds like fun.
I mean, like, I'll be playing with my kids and they'll be running around with a sword and I gotta fuck them up, you know? They'll try to come at me. It's like, whoosh, whoosh.
Right? Like, I just want to be the LARPer that shows up as like Star Wars and be like, sure, you know, I'm here.
You ever see the Star Wars samurai suits, like where they're all like samurai looking and they got the mask and stuff?
The
brutal.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead. Let's get back into what we're here for.
Yeah, I can talk all D&D stuff all day long. Yeah.
So with D&D and coming up with the story, how would you say your growth as, you know, just the dungeon master has evolved with each and every issue? Like you said, you try to give them room to have fun. How has your experience just being a DM and the growth within that just evolved throughout every single issue?
So early on, I would take like an entire day before the campaign, like an entire day. And sometimes maybe even like over the course of a week, I'd spend, 8-10 hours building this overarching story with these intricate plot lines and all this stuff, right? I would like write an entire session and I would bring it to the table and I'd be very excited for something to happen and they would screw it up.
Leroy Jenkins.
Every single time. Okay? But what would happen is in the campaign, I would have to readjust my thought process because I'm a methodical person and I'm a planner, right? Like I have everything planned for the rest of my month, let alone week, let alone a 6-hour session of gaming, right? So when they would screw up my plan, it would mess me up. My mind would just be screwed and I'd be like, well, what do I do? And after a few sessions, I went to Brad, who had been DMing since he was a kid. He's the one that got me into it. And I said, well, what do I do? Like you guys continually screw this stuff up. And he said, well, he goes, how many games have you played with me? I'm like, I don't know. We've been playing for years, like it's too many to count. He's like, would you believe me if I said I never planned one session? I just had an idea. Really? Yeah. All those sessions that you guys like rave about how fun they were. I just said, hey, this is the situation. You guys ran with it, and then I ran with whatever you were running.
And then you're like, dude, I spend like 10, 20 hours on this, and you just don't?
I was so mad. I'm like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me, like, we have this one game session we played in Mass Effect where we wind up going back in time because our campaign took place a little bit after the games. Mm-hmm. Mass Effect 3 had come out, which kind of screwed with our timeline. And so he sent us back in time because of some of the dumb things that we did. We actually caused time travel, and he was very mad about this. So he was like, all right, well, you end up back in time, and you show up right at this massive battle for the third game. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And I remember how chaotic and fun and crazy that entire session was. And I'm like, you didn't have any plans for that entire thing? He goes, no. I'm like, dude, we still talk about that session 10 years later. You didn't plan that? No, I just rolled with you guys figuring, hey, this would happen. This would happen. Mm-hmm. He's like, I have a rough idea of like things that could happen in the game. He's like, but you guys screw everything up every time you play. And he goes, but that's the nature of Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. If you play, like, there's sessions that are pre-written and a DM can funnel you through. But they're written with different options to happen. Yeah. If you're homebrewing a campaign and you're playing off the cuff, it's really hard to have, like, you don't have a group of writers that writes a 600-page book on story.
The homebrew, like, I see what you did there, by the way.
Yeah. He's like, so if you have to do all this, he said the best way to do it is just come up with an idea, let us play with it, and then you react to us, causing us to react to you, and it's a more organic story. So that's what this issue we are on Kickstarter with right now. I came in and I said, hey, this is the situation. I built some mechanics for like villains and things. But I was like, I'm not putting hours into this. I put a couple hours into building some of the enemies for it. And that was about it. Just making sure things were balanced. And they had so much fun. This session, we still, so issue 5, Intestinal Fortitude, we literally will still reference things that happened in this session 3 years later because it was that much fun.
So this was the one that you did differently compared to the other ones then?
Yeah, it really made me grow with my DM style, which I think in turn really grows our storytelling ability, because I'm not limiting us to this, hey, I want this to happen. I'm opening it up to all chance, all action and reaction, which really creates an organic story versus, hey, here's your sandbox. You can play with these certain toys. Just don't go to that side because I didn't mess with that side. I put a dog over there. Don't go over there. I just said, hey, let's have fun, and man, did they have fun.
Yeah, that's basically how I do my interviews. I used to do indie game developer interviews, and I would plan everything out. I was very on the point with everything, making sure it was scripted and everything. I never went without a script, and I did interview after interview after interview. When I started doing the indie comic interviews, I never scripted anything. If anything, I try to stay as fresh and organic as humanly possible. Like any sort of reference material, I always read an hour before the interview, no more nor less. Like, because I want it to be right then and there. So that way I'm able to bring it up. It doesn't ferment. It does. I'm not overthinking stuff. Because for me, that's the best way to be organic. That's the best way, because you're giving me information, I'm bouncing it back, you're bouncing it back. We're having an actual conversation here. This isn't like your cut and cookie cutter interview. This is like us just cutting the shit, calling it a podcast. You know what I mean? That's like my favorite type.
You get a more organic, conversation, and D&D is just conversing with friends, but telling a story at the same time. And, I would tell anybody, if you're into any kind of role-playing game, any kind of role-playing game, and I'm even talking about Call of Duty, because you take on the role of the guy shooting the gun. So if you're into it's really any kind of video game that you can enjoy, you can find something in D&D that's fun. I've played everything. I have a consistent character that I created called David the Gnome, and I would take on different roles. So when I was a ranger, I was the gnome ranger, kind of like the lone ranger. And I have a character now where I'm like a halfling rogue that I lie to everybody that I'm really a warlock or a wizard, and when I stab things, I say abracadabra, and they really think that I'm using magic, but I'm not. I just rolled really good bullshit stats. So, when I say you can do whatever you want, I use those characters as an example. As I had one character where I said, hey, I have really bad ADD. I don't like playing one character. Can I have one character that shapeshifts into 6 different characters at random, and they all have different personalities, and I never really know what I'm going to do? And my DM was like, why are you doing this to me? But yes. And because I did that, it drove our story in a different direction as well, which those are the things that make D&D so much fun, which is why I think our book stands apart from other books in the superhero genre, because I'm not oblivious. I know the superhero genre is saturated beyond belief, right? We're not a typical superhero book because my characters aren't superheroes. They have powers. They might do some good things, but they're not heroes. It's a journey. I use superheroes because people see guys in suits fighting things and oh, those are superheroes. I'm like, but they don't answer a call. They're on a journey. And that's where it separates. You don't see them go, hey, the Masters of Mayhem are causing a thing. We need to go stop them. It's like, hey, Technetic is paying us to go to Georgia to investigate these supervillains that are causing a problem in a city that's lowering their return on investment. We need to go save money. Wait a minute, there's a bigger thing. Oh, they are supervillains. All right, we should just kill them. But no, don't arrest them because hey guys, don't kill my guys. I want them to come back. I put a lot of work into them. No, we need to kill them. If we don't kill them, it's like Batman and Joker. These guys are coming, you get just so much more depth in the character when you don't have to pigeonhole them. And that's what you get with our campaign. You get real world people, because again, I pitched this to them as you are the character, because a lot of them hadn't role played in a long time. So if I just met you, Cody, and I said, hey, we're going to play D&D, and you're like, well, I've never played D&D before, I'm not going to ask you to role play Chris, because you don't know Chris. You've never been Chris, and it's really hard for you, like if you've never role played before, to jump in the shoes of someone you don't know. You don't have acting background, nothing. Well, hey, but you know Cody, right? And you could play yourself in a situation. So, hey, Cody, I want you to be you, but this is what happens to you. How do you handle that? And you can do that. Anybody could really do that. Yeah. Okay, cool. This happens to me. Yep, this is how I'd react. Okay, now we can make a story and we can have a lot of fun because it's you, right? And that's what I did with our story to make it fun and enjoyable for my characters, which translates into fun and enjoyable for readers, because we don't have to worry about writing a story arc. Yeah. Write itself.
No, I really liked. I like how the evolution of the run has been too. It started off with I believe was a bank robbery. Yeah. They were learning, they had powers, and they stopped a bank robbery, and then they move on to fight supervillains. And so, what's issue number 5? What's the main story of that going to be? Because it seems like it just keeps building up higher and higher. What are they going up against in this run?
So in issue 4, they find this character Bones, who I'll go back. In issue 3, they come across these supervillains in New Orleans. They were investigating an abandoned building that had come up on their radar from previous issues. Everything kind of like it's a rabbit trail. And so what they find in issue 3, they escape the building, but they have no closure to what happened to these villains because they really didn't see them die. And they also know that there was some kind of guy remotely dialing in that was causing a bigger problem. Well, their boss, Technetic, comes in and says, well, hey, there's some weird stuff going on in Georgia that sounds similar to what these guys are. You need to go investigate that. So in book 4, they're investigating these weird things, come across this big, giant, 7-foot tall, knight paladin guy who has an energy sword and an energy shield, a guy that looks like a crab, and a guy that throws fireballs. And they're like, oh, well, so how did you get made? And you come to find out they escaped this testing facility. And they're like, we're not going back, right? We're not going back. We don't want to go back there. Both groups think that they're the enemy, and they find out real quick, wait a minute, there's a bigger enemy.
Yeah.
And so in book 5, they're chasing this bigger enemy. And my characters love to think that, oh, this isn't a big deal. We're going to show up and beat the guys up. It's like, nope, you can't just do that, because you've got to go through the facility, figure out what's going on. And they just uncover this kind of like a breeding ground for supervillains. And what they kind of deal with is, what do these villains do when one of their test subjects gets loose?
Ooh.
It doesn't end pretty for the rest of the test subjects, because they got to clean up the mess now. We can't just have a guy running loose, especially a 7-foot tall guy that calls on a sword, saying, hey, I came from that way, Like, you got to clean that up.
So this entire campaign, though, it's all based on pure luck of the roll, right? So all their actions, just how good that action's played out is determined by the roll. And then you also said that you're actively trying to kill them too during this.
That's my goal. Yeah.
So what would happen if one of their characters die? Would you make some sort of attempt to bring them back, or would that character just be dead?
So originally, Caliber died in book 1. This is the only retcon we ever did, and it was prior to the book being made that the retcon happened. So I allowed it to stay in the comic. But I had just finalized the design of Caliber before I did the comic book. I had just drawn him out finally and said, hey, this is what your character looks like. And we played the session, and he goes down. Oh. Well, the thing is, there's magic that can bring people back to life. There are things that revitalize characters.
Mm-hmm.
And we had finalized that Calibur's build was he's immune to magic. He is immune to anything magical. So fireballs have no effect on him, but healing spells have no effect on him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why in the end of issue 1, if you and anybody that's read it, you see them kind of like wonder, why can't we heal this guy? Because even a normal human being you can use magic on. It's not working on Calibur. There's something else going on with Calibur. And we find out through the progression of the issues. And his word is, your bullshit doesn't work on me. I don't believe in magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the opposite of Disney. And so I remember he died, and we argued, and I'm like, dude, you can't die. I just finalized your freaking character. We did a rebuild on his character 4 different times. I spent 2 weeks. Well, I'm like, I'm not killing you.
Yeah.
I was like, DM call, some bullshit in the world happens, and you're back to life.
Yeah, get the paddles ready.
Right. I'm like, you know, I have seen people come. I've personally been declared dead 3 times. My heart has stopped 3 times in my life. And I use that as my argument. I'm like, if I can die 3 times, dude, you can die 3 times. We're good. And he was like, no. I'll just roll a new character. I said, Brad, I'm not doing this shit with you again. Like, you're not. I'm not doing it.
You're either coming back as Calibur or you're out.
yeah. It became an argument, and finally he was like, fine. And so that was the only character that I've come close to dying. But when we introduced Bones is a healer class. So some of my other characters, they do go down, and you see, especially Spectre in the earlier stages of the game and in the comic, he goes down quite a bit because he's usually the first one to try and jump into combat because he's a warlock. And they're like glass cannons. They do a lot of damage, but they take a lot of damage. And so Bones is able to heal people when he remembers that he has that ability. And then later on, Boulder also goes down quite a bit. And actually, we played 2 weeks ago, and Boulder was in D&D. There's this thing called death saves. So when you hit 0 health points, you can roll to try and stabilize. So you have a chance to save your character. Well, Boulder succeeded, so he was stabilized, and the team comes in to save him last minute. But yes, I actually said in the group chat, I was like, hey, I'm going to ask before I do this, but he's down. I can kill him. I can coup de grace him. I can do a lot of things. And it became an argument. No, you can't kill our friend. And that's the kind of the really cool part. So this last session we just played, we're 3 years in, right? And we had an argument, a 30-minute argument over killing a character because they were so invested in their friend.
Yeah.
And the words weren't, hey, you can't just kill Boulder because he, fans like him. The words were, no, even if this was like the whole pitch on this is, what would we do in real life? And Brad was like, I would not let you kill my friend. Yeah. You're not going to kill my friend. And I thought that was really cool because now it's like transcended this D&D thing. It's like, no, we're not killing my friend. I'm not going to watch him die on paper.
So earlier you said you kind of like being the one in control of stuff. Like how does this work against that? You wanting to do what you want to do, but having to ultimately, give in a little bit. How has that, caused growth for you over the years?
I've changed what I want. And what I want is my players to have fun because I want us to have a fun story. Instead of me wanting to achieve a story goal, I like to achieve I call it a friendship goal. I like to know they enjoy what they're doing. And so as long as they're having fun, I'm fine. Story can go any direction we want. It's done some things I would have never intended, like fighting a kaiju. That was never even meant to happen. I let Brad guest DM one session, and he put a freaking kaiju in it, so now I have to draw a kaiju at some point. And it's all because Austin's obsessed with Godzilla, so he gave him what he wanted. But as long as they're having fun. So I just changed my goal. My goal is to create a fun story. How do you do that? You have your players have fun. So in real world, I'm a boss. I have 100 and something employees, and if you want work to go well, you have to have happy employees.
Yeah.
So the same thing goes with my comic. If I want my story to be fun and enjoyable, the guys writing it need to have fun and be enjoying what they're doing.
No, absolutely, absolutely. One last question before we dive into your tiers. How are you able to take, what happens in your campaigns and like your players like take that and put that on paper? You say that this campaign's been going on for 3 years. You got six issues out. How are you able to condense that time into just these single issues?
That's a good question. So I record everything, and I actually started recording the second session on because I knew early on I was going to draw these things and I needed references. So I record everything on my iPad or on my phone. And when I get, we're 36 issues, right at like 36 issues written. So I have quite a bit recorded. When I go in to start,
so you're like issue 6 right now, and you have like 30 more to go.
Well, I think we've planned right at like 40.
Dang.
40.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It will end. It will have a definite ending
Mm-hmm.
to the story. We've decided we will end this series and move on to something else. There's so many things we can do. I'll go into a little bit of the end game a little bit, in a minute, but I record everything. And then when I'm at the gym, when I'm driving, sometimes when I'm just sitting here drawing, I'm listening to the session.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminds me, because I forget so many things that did happen, because I can remember the big things, but some of the little things will bleed in and like, oh man, I need to keep that. That was cool. And so I storyboard out my pages while listening to our session. And it's 6 hours, and there's usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours of us talking about what we did for that month, our kids, our wives, our jobs,
Mm-hmm.
our hobbies. We'll sometimes, real world events get brought up, things we don't want in the book because we play to get away from those things. Yeah. So I'll filter out that and I'll storyboard the session. Sometimes some of our personal talks are so hilarious that I put that in there as banter because that's how you get real conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And after I storyboard it through, I'll send it to the guys and I'll say, hey, what do you guys think of this? We'll tweak a few things, go back and forth, and then I'll finalize the pages, sit there and spend a week drawing 2 or 3 different pages. And then I'll just start the process over and over again until we're done with the book. When the book's done, I have most of the dialogue. When I'm sketching it out, I'll write the dialogue that we've said into the bubbles. Like I'll just write it out.
So the dialogue's pretty much taken word for word.
Most of it, yes. And
that's awesome.
Then we'll go in. We'll fix some of it because sometimes, a player will drop out, like especially remotely. They might come back
Mm-hmm.
in and just they won't say anything, or their reaction to a situation isn't what it should be because they were missing for a few minutes or something like that. And so we'll do some edits with that. And then we go to the whole team because it's me, Brad, and Terrell that really are the core comic team. Then we bring it to everybody and say, okay, read your lines, make sure this is something your character would say. We give them a minute because when we're playing, that you're in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. But if you could go back and say something different, how would Austin's really bad about this.
Do you think it's harder to do this campaign knowing that it's going to be scripted into a comic book?
We decided we would not let the comic influence the game.
Okay, I gotcha.
Because we started to. There was a lot of talks like, oh, well, this is going to show up in the comic book. I don't want this to happen. It's like, no. We started this game without the idea of the comic book, and it was fun. And now the comic book is fun because we were having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let one influence the other, or else the magic is gone.
Yeah.
And that comes from me playing music. When I was writing music, I always wrote just to enjoy what I was writing and have fun. And, I never wrote because, oh, this band's doing that, I want to do that. When you start writing what you think people want is when you lose those people, right? They liked what you wrote when you were alone in your basement, bored out of your mind. They don't want you to write for them. They want you to write for you.
Yeah.
And so I continually tell the guys, don't play the game with the idea of what the fans want, right? When we're at the table and we're playing, what matters is what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we can make ourselves happy and there's 7 of us involved, if we have 7 people that like what we're doing, well, that's 10 people additional per. That's another 70 people, and that just bleeds out, right? So as long as we like it, we're good. And so yeah.
Yeah, basically, it sounds like you guys just got a D&D campaign with a comic book on top.
Yes.
Yeah.
Originally, we were going to do a source book similar to one of these instead. That was the original idea was, hey, let's release a source book of this material, and then we'll release the comic book. Like when I did the comic, we'll just release like an issue to like show some of the characters. And the comic book kind of overtook that idea.
No,
so
cool.
And our end goal now is to finish this comic book, and then the world that our comic book leaves off on is the world that players will be able to create a game in. So then we'll release the game.
Okay, no, that's really cool. So you're going to do like a whole bunch of world building over 40 issues, and then have the source book afterwards. So everyone who's read everything they're just fully immersed in it. That's insane.
As a kid, I grew up on Star Wars. Actually, everybody in our group except for Austin grew up on Star Wars. It's a thread that connects all of us. And what I thought was cool was, in the 90s, George Lucas, the reason we have all these cool books that you see on my shelf and even over here, George Lucas opened up Star Wars, the universe, to other people to create things within the universe. And they would have to submit them. Like every book that you read before Disney took over was submitted.
Yeah.
Like it was a script that was submitted to George Lucas, and he would say, yeah, that's cool, we'll keep that. Or no. And he even made edits to some of these books and said, well, this wouldn't happen. Right. And that's kind of what we want to be able to do, is open up our world to other people and say, hey, have fun in our world. And then we kind of will be able to sift through and say, yeah, that can canonically happen in our universe now. And then we have people building stories in our universe, which is what D&D really is, because you see all these homebrewed stories that happen within D&D. We want to be another version of that, and give people this superhero world that's like a mix of D&D with modern world, and our own little mix on it. And there's no better way to get people interested in what you're doing than put it all into 40 issues and build everything for them and say, hey, now it's your sandbox, have fun.
No, that's so awesome. It has to be, I don't even know, indescribable to have like this planned out, 40 issues, and then have a source book with like your own expanded universe. Like that's just insane. Now, speaking of that, let's go ahead. Let's dive into your tiers. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I'll pull that up.
Yeah, so we'll go over the campaign. Again, sorry about that, but I'm sure
no problem. Quick, congratulations for doubling your goal.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So how fast did you get this funded?
26 minutes.
Wow. Were you expecting that?
No. I actually had a minor panic attack asking for $1,500. My campaigns have never exceeded $750 because our first venture on Kickstarter failed. I had asked for $1,500. I didn't really need $1,500. I just did some market research, and everything said ask for $1,500. So coming off of my first campaign never failing, when I did the math on this, I was like, I really need a little bit more. Luckily, I had some left over from a campaign previously. I was like, well, $1,500 is what we're gonna have to ask for to make this happen, just because of the sheer volume this book is. It's 50 pages just for one issue.
How many pages were your other issues?
The highest I've ever done is 32 pages.
So yeah, this is a almost like a fourth more.
Well, this is 2 books in one. Book 6 was a very heavy dialogue book with more story building than I wanted to put in a single issue.
Oh,
most of what
you started cutting out again.
Just all this. Oh, sorry. What happened with book 6 was it was going to be mostly dialogue based, and I said, well, I can't have just a book of dialogue. I consolidated it down and I turned it into an epilogue for this book because it's a very heavy action book. So closing with a few 10 pages of closure, right, made sense. because you have 20 pages of just action.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Pages of like, oh, this is happening and this is happening and these are the moving pieces. Okay, we can do that with an epilogue. I didn't want to come back in June with book 6. Oh, this awesome book about them talking about business. So I consolidated that and said I'd rather pitch a 50-page book that has closure and really like closing out this chapter. And so when I did the math, though, I have a colorist, you know, Cristiano Cruz comes in and colors all this stuff. And I said, I can't short him. He's doing almost 2 books in one.
Yeah, and the coloring in the issue looks phenomenal too.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, he is great.
Because you had a nice samples from issue 0, issue 1, issue 2, and you could see the progression of the coloring through each of the pages.
So I'll go down here to the pages. Well, first I do want to show these off because I love our covers.
Yeah.
Mo, who did this, Mo Lubison, actually was a fan art first. He submitted a fan art to me for book 2, which I then turned into a cover, and I've brought him on since. For all of my standard covers are always done by him. We have 2
Isn't
retail.
that crazy how that started out as just fan art too?
Yep, and he's been drawn since like the mid '90s, and so I brought him on. And then Robert Nix is an artist. I just really fell in love with his style. It's this mix of American with Western. It's like manga style, but not. It's very exaggerated action scenes. And so I pitched him on book 4. I said, hey, I want I have this, we have a cat in the book, Samedi.
Oh, I love the cat. Yeah, the cat's awesome.
Well, he's an alcoholic, cigar smoking, top hat wearing, sarcastic prick. That's
so he's able to control things with his mind, it looked like, or was I misled?
Yeah. He can speak telepathically to Spectre. He has his own power set, but he only comes in when he has to. He is a support role. So how he works mechanically for the story is he bestows power onto Spectre.
Okay.
He's almost like a Green Lantern ring or something like that, to where when he's present, Spectre has access to more powers than he would if the cat wasn't. And so in book 4, though, we had just introduced the cat to Spectre recently in the story, and playing D&D, you know, as your character grows, there's more stuff on a piece of paper that you have to remember to do, and he forgot the cat. So when I was writing the story, I was like, hey, by book 4, people want to know where Samedi is. They like Samedi. Like he's a fan favorite by now. And I was writing on my guys, we have a problem. Spectre doesn't use Samedi. And so I called Austin. I said, hey, why didn't you use Samedi in this book? Like, give me a reason. He goes, he was drunk. So I had a scene where the cat gets drunk. So I asked Robert, I said, hey, can you have a scene where the cat gets drunk? And he did this phenomenal cover for that book. And so I brought him back with this one, and I pitched Robert the idea. I said, hey, there's a scene where Boulder's screaming, the cream is sour, do not devour. He had bad tacos. And so I just gave him that. And I said, I just want this very emotional, epic scene having to do with tacos. We came up with this. We had bounced some ideas back and forth, and this was what we finally
We got Craig from the chat saying he loves a partner or sidekick that actually gives powers versus an item. And I have to agree. I think I really like the take. It almost gives me, what is it, Dexter? The Red Lantern cat? Where they tied him up in a bag, threw him in the river. It almost gives me that vibe. In a sense, just because it's like a super, powered cat. It's awesome, yeah.
I didn't actually know about Dexter until after Samedi was made. And I was like, well, because I never, I did a live once where I was talking about things and somebody said, stop ripping off Dragon Ball Z. And I was like, I've seen a few episodes. I actually, and I might get crucified for this one. I do not like Dragon Ball Z. It's a lot of filler, and I've watched the abridged version where you really cut out all the BS, and I was like, okay, I can do that, but I never even knew that.
I guess like so when you're like 9 or 10 though, and you're watching that filler, you're like, fuck yeah, go Super Saiyan for 5 episodes.
But I'm the guy now that, like, you know, I might get crucified for this one too. I'm at the age where I mean age, but a part in my life where I'm so busy with everything else, I can't even play games on hard anymore. I want to just play them on easy so I can get through the story and I can enjoy the game. And I had this talk with one of my friends recently. He was like, "Hey, so this game came out." And he's like, I hate to say it, but I played it on easy." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I just feel ashamed. Like, I should be playing it on hard." I'm like, "Nah, we just don't have time for it anymore."
Yeah.
I want to be able to accomplish everything in life. I can't spend 6 hours on the same set, you know. And that's how I feel about.
Do not play Elden Ring.
I can't. I don't like being punished for playing video games. But you know, going into like how some of that fit into this, you know, I really wanted to dive into some of the D&D style, and we are heavily manga influenced. Boulder, literally, when I asked how he wanted to create his character, he said, "I want to be Eddie Murphy that turned into All Might." You know, that's how he described his character. And even Bones, like when I asked him about like his character play style, he said, "I want to be like somebody from Seven Deadly Sins." You know, so the only character I think that is based on American comics is Reach. And that was because Reach gave me full control to develop his character. And I was like, I really like Forge from X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a big fan of Forge, who's this background style character, which would Reach, because of his availability to play, he would be a background character. And I was like, that'd be really cool. Fits, you know, what Obi likes to do in real life. Anyway, he's a tech freak. And so I said, cool. We have one character based off of American comics. The rest are all manga, anime based, which is really where these guys come in. My enemies. You know, this cover right here, by the way, these two are foil covers on the Kickstarter. So I cannot wait to actually hold them in my hands. And
yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I've got like foil covers somewhere. I think I have one right here for book 4. And my printer does like a really phenomenal job.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, so those are the covers for book 5. And what I'll also show you the trade paperback, because I just got the artwork finalized for that.
So are you going to be doing some sort of like graphic novel at any point where you're putting all these into just one reading, like, you know, one book?
That's what this is right here.
Okay, hey.
Yep. You led that in.
Speak of the devil.
So, you know, in issue 0, we see them going to work for the first time. They get powers at work. Their employer knows they have powers, and most of the first chapter is them being employed as heroes.
You know, I really, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I love this. Like the front cover is them, like when they're starting out, and then the end looks like them in their costumes.
Mm-hmm. They're actually looking in the mirror. Yep.
Yeah, that's so awesome, dude. That's really cool.
So this is, again, Mo Lubison. He loves our stuff. And what's really cool is Mo is from another country, and there is very little translation there. We understand each other fine. We've done lives together. He's a great guy. He's been doing comics since the 90s, and his style to me just fit what I wanted, which was that 90s kind of exaggerated comic book style. And so even though my artwork isn't like that, it fits the tone very well. So I just absolutely loved what he did with that cover, being able to have the mirror image of the characters. Because you'll see in issue 0, they're not in costume until middle to the end. This, you know, it starts off with them in a board meeting. Mm-hmm. You know, they're literally in their it's their first day on the job, and they're going through the orientation meeting, and an explosion happens. There's an attack. We don't get closure to this, by the way, until much later in the series. You find out who actually attacked them, because I really didn't want to explain that for a long time. I wanted to leave it open-ended. And then you got to give them a reason to come back too. Right. From day one, I had in mind what I wanted to end with, given it's changed clearly because of D&D and how things work. But I was able to keep intact my original core idea throughout 3 years of them screwing everything up. So that's pretty remarkable. Yeah. Thank God, because when I'm thinking about a long-term lasting story, I had to be loose with my ideas to allow them to evolve. Because if you get really hard on things, it makes it really hard to adjust in case of change. Mm-hmm. But I left this so loose that the idea was able to stay intact. And I've actually really enjoyed that. We talked about that recently, how I don't have to change my ending that I had in the very beginning. And so issue 0, you see them as normal, everyday people. In the very end, you do see them on their first heroic adventure in their original suits that I drew, which were not great. And then at the very, very end, there's another board meeting where they're talking about their new suits, and they make fun of the old suits and how the new suits are not, copyrighted.
That's like almost like a throwback of Deadpool making fun of himself being Green Lantern.
Yes, there's a lot of like pop culture, and one thing that I love about our series is we have so many of those references that you can go, oh, that's like this, or that's like this. And some creators get really upset when you say, this reminds me of this. I'm the exact opposite. If you tell me, hey, this reminds me of this, I've done something right, because our entire story is heavily influenced by everything else that we've experienced in life. Mm-hmm. The reasons we are able to enjoy it is because we have that reference in our head. So I always like the idea that our pop culture references are there, because you might not know Crit, but and I think there's the scene that I put in here. I didn't put it on this. I should have. Kick myself later. At the end of book 3, we have a scene from the other guys, which actually played out at the table. We were running over on time. An explosion was happening in this building, and I said, guys, what do you do? Well, Spectre can teleport, so Spectre teleports his way out of the building. Mm-hmm. Reach has the ability. He has like booster boots. He's like, I'm going to fly out. I'm like, well, that leaves Boulder and Caliber has no superpowers. And, Boulder, he's just a strong guy. Like, he's a Captain America. He can't fly. He can jump high. He can survive. Mm-hmm. So so in game, I said, well, what are you guys going to do? You got like 5 seconds. The building's about to blow up. Brad puts on the table the scene from the other guys where it goes, aim for the bushes. So when it came to the book and we're sitting there and I'm like, what are we going to do with the ending? And Brad was like, you gotta use aim for the bushes. And so I put it in there. I modified some of the song lyrics so we don't get sued. And you see them jumping they literally look at each other like, hey, what do we do? And there's only one thing we can do. Aim for the bushes. And they just jump right at the building. And somebody that doesn't know Crit, though, can relate to that scene. Now all of a sudden, oh, I like this because it's comfortable. And a lot of our book is fun and comfortable. And also in book 2, you see this guy who clearly rips off Caliber's suit from book 0, by the way. Mm-hmm. He just stole it from a cargo ship and becomes Caliber in his own way. Book 3, we introduce our villains. This guy you would see in issue 1. This is the same guy that's actually right here, just unmasked, and he's fatter because his actual superpower is he absorbs kinetic energy. And the fight starts off this with Caliber throwing grenades at him. Well, he doesn't expend the kinetic energy between books 1 and 2. So in book 3, he gets fat because that kinetic energy is like calories to his body, and unused turns to fat. So he becomes a fat guy. And in real life, this is the DM that I made so mad that he closed the book and never came back.
Oh, that's so you got a little throwback to him in there.
Yeah, he always told me he was trained as a sumo samurai. That's what he told me, and I'm like, dude,
and you're like, dude, you're so full of shit right now.
You couldn't even bend over to put the pen on the floor. And then we go into issue 4, where you do get to see them again in their work suits, because they're at work. They're investigating a scene for their boss. Mm-hmm. And in good fashion, they crash their van just like they do in every other book, because Caliber hates, having nice things. So our tiers, you can get a digital copy, individual. If you've collected the other ones, you can pick up a digital copy for $3.
And for anyone that's interested, we do have the Kickstarter link in the description. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're able to check that out right now and get the digital. $3. Act fast.
$6 if you want to get all the books. If you want to catch up on all of them, we go.
Which that's not bad at all. That's like a $1 a piece almost.
Yeah. They're on my website for $1 a piece. I really don't digital copies really don't cost anything for us, and I would rather get the story out. I'm not a guy that's out here trying to make a ton of money. I just want to be able to pay for the hobby and keep it going. So, the standard covers right here, we have, I've showed the art off on those. All of these will come with a mini poster set, the standard cover mini posters. As a stretch goal, we just unlocked additional mini posters for everybody as well. So you'll get digital and physical in this tier. So, you'll get the digitals first for people that don't really some collectors don't even like opening the books. So that way they can keep them sealed and they can still read them. These deluxe editions, they have additional artwork. So on the villain book, we have some of the villain like designs that I had done previously. I have some of the fan art. On the hero side, same thing. Some of the original designs for the heroes that never made it, as well as there's going to be some commentary by me at the very end that I wrote up as a thank you for everyone that has invested time and energy into the book. So there's things that I would love to tell everybody all the time, and not everybody gets to check my lives out. So, some of the stuff similar to how it is to be a dungeon master.
Do you go live mostly on the Facebook page?
I do Instagram live. My schedule right now, I do 2 or 3 of these. Actually, yesterday I did 2 YouTube shows. Today I'm doing 1. I got 1 on. The
YouTube show is the Pharaohs one, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep, I have all those social medias linked in the description as well. So if you guys want to check out his live stream, be sure to sub to his YouTube. Follow him on Instagram. We have every single social media platform that he has listed on the website in the description.
Quite a bit of them too. Thank you. But when I'm not doing Kickstarters, or if I don't have like an interview scheduled, I'll just go live on my own Instagram and I call it Shoot the Crit now. Just talk about the book. And there's nothing better than getting on there and just, talking about something I'm passionate about.
It's pretty catchy too.
I can't take credit. Came up with it. So for a while, we've been talking about introducing the game. And so we've got levels 1 through 5, very balanced for the characters. So if you are a D&D fan and you'd like to create your own character, we've got the Ready to Roll set, which does come with the character sheets and a basic rule set. So that's $15. You'll be able to get the book. You'll get your own custom D6 die, which have character faces on all of them. You'll get a sticker pack, the mini posters, as well as you'll get custom character sheets. So they're made just for our game. And Righteous Hero Bundle, you get the foil cover and you get the standard cover, both hero covers of the book with a t-shirt. And you'll get this t-shirt, season 1 t-shirt, custom D20 on the front. Yeah.
And the shirt itself, if you add it on, is $25 if I remember correctly. So I mean that you're getting the book and the shirt. You get the shirt basically, the comics for free at that point.
Exactly. I really didn't want to make a ton of money on this, and if I order in bulk, I really save some, and that transitions into savings for other people as well. So some people want to do a physical catch up. Some people want to read all in one book. There's different types of readers and collectors out there. So depending on who you are, you can do either one. You can do both. You can add this onto anything. So you can do the trade paperback by itself and get all 6 books. However you like to read. I wanted to make it accessible for everybody. And then we have our 2 high dollar tiers. One is all 4 books with the trade paperback and the t-shirt, pretty much everything minus some of the D&D stuff. And then the Critical Role. So I still have in design right now. I'm waiting for I've kicked back the design a couple times for the figure, but I have a Caliber figure being made, and it's actually a small statue. He's up against a wall with bullet holes penetrated through the thing.
That's cool. Why Caliber?
I did Boulder last time, so Boulder.
I gotcha.
Had his own figure. And so with book 5, I wanted to do Caliber, and then I'll do one every single Kickstarter.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that was like a tribute because you said he died and then you had to bring him back, like a little bit of a retcon. So I wasn't sure if that was like a little throwback to it or not.
Nope. So everybody's gonna eventually have something. We were gonna do a statue for Spectre or for the cat, but he has his own little stuff.
I love the plushie. The plushie is awesome, dude.
Yeah, I had to have it.
Yeah.
It cost me way more than it probably should have, but it was so worth it. So this tier, that comes with everything that we have in the Kickstarter is there. Plus you get the Caliber figure. That's probably those are only printed for the Kickstarter. Those won't come anytime after. We got add-ons too. So if you missed out on book 4 and you like to collect cards, we've got the whole collector card set, which I have right here. You get those. They're all designed kind of like with the D&D theme as well. So those are on there. The villain cards were just unlocked as a stretch goal, so everyone will get those as a physical. If you want to add on any additional covers, if you think your friends or family would like it and you want to pick up an additional book, you can do that. And then I do have, back issues for any tier. So in case you just want to add them on, you can. And then, of course, you can get your own plushie. These came in at a high.
I was going to say $35 doesn't seem like too bad of a price at all.
No. I still have quite a few left. I ordered in bulk because I have a couple of Comic Cons this year that I wanted to be able to have them at. And kind of what happened to me, people got theirs and they were like, hey, my kid took it as soon as I opened it. So some of them want replacements. And then, end of this, I just want to introduce my team. There's me, there's my colorist, Cristiano. He is a godsend. He really brings everything to life. Here's Brad and Terrell. Interesting fact, Brad in real life knows 7 different forms of martial arts, and he is a marksman shooter. He is he's placed like top in the state.
So he could basically be his character.
Yeah. Actually, he told me he's trying to lose weight now and get back in shape so he could, because he still takes he's working on creating his own form of martial arts. He's working with 2 other instructors.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Some things. And in real life, Terrell's actually a Olympic class wrestler. So he in college qualified for the Olympics, and he holds like 2 or 3 different titles in the state of North Carolina still, which is impressive.
Yeah, that's wild. Your team is very impressive. They all seem like they can whip my ass.
Well, those 2 guys maybe. Obi in real life is like the short guy, and he actually used to be a power lifter, which is funny. And he's put on a little bit of weight. So I asked him, I was like, hey, when I do the book, can I make you fat? He was like, of course, you make me fat. That's cool. And then Austin actually works for PAX. So he goes around, he does cosplay professionally.
Does he have a cat?
He actually does have a cat in real life.
Yeah, I paid attention.
Yeah, so he loves cats. He just, he's allergic to them.
I'm allergic to cats as well, too.
So this is Ryan Kidd, his character Bones, which we kind of talk about a little bit of his background in the book, but in real life, he has brittle bone syndrome, similar to Sam Jackson's character from Glass. Yeah. And so when we were making the character of Bones, his background is when he was experimented on with this magical energy, it reacted with his disease, causing his body to overcompensate for his brittle bones, making them bigger and stronger, causing him to grow to like 7 foot tall.
Okay.
Massive hulking thing, which also plays into some of the character's flaws and weaknesses, where he's actually afraid. Like, he wears this big, heavy armor. He really doesn't need to. He does have a lot of natural like density to him now because of his magic abilities, but because he went his whole life like afraid to break a bone, right? That even though he knows now his body's overcompensated for that, he's lived 30 years. So he's like, hey, I'm wearing heavy armor. I have a shield, that it's still in his head that he could break a bone at any time. Yeah. Which is interesting for a character that is our tank,
Yeah.
So that's our team, and definitely check it out. I appreciate everyone that has backed the Kickstarter. If you've checked Crit out before, you know that I'm all about giving back to people. And I say this, book 1, it failed on Kickstarter. I had a friend of mine who invested in us. He hit me up on Facebook and said, how much do you need? And he's independently wealthy. He paid for it. I went to everybody on Kickstarter that had backed book 1, and I sent them a free book.
That's awesome.
I just said, hey, thank you for believing in the project. And a lot of them have continually come back for more books. So
I bet that move right there definitely was one of those saving grace moves. I bet every single one that got the free copies, like, we're staying with this guy because of this.
That was like my hope was to show them that this isn't me. I've seen creators that they go back to Kickstarter. There's some poor practices. One is create a second profile to launch another title, and that's not me. That's not my team. We are 100% dedicated to our books, and I would rather make just enough to pay for the book and maybe a little bit of side stuff than take a profit.
And I could definitely always
pays for itself is awesome.
I could definitely always respect someone who's willing to do that. For my craft as well, if I can get that product to you cheaper and get it in your hands, I'd rather do that than make a buck off of it. Because for me, word of mouth, you can't really put a price on that. I would make more from you telling your friends about it instead of getting that dollar from the sale.
Yeah, my end goal is just to get Crit in as many hands as possible. And last time we did about 126 backers. I know March is a much tougher month to launch a book in. I found that out the hard way. So I'm hoping we can break 100 backers this time. That'd be nice. Cool thing is a lot of new backers. We have a lot of people that came back for this book and brought their friends, which is kind of cool. There's the tier with the new books has done very well. So blessed to have funded in 26 minutes. Now that blessing goes on to everybody else because they're getting free stuff every time we unlock something.
That is so awesome. So
at
I think
3,500, we are going to be unlocking the next tier, which is pins and stickers.
Ooh.
So, we do have a sticker pack on a few of them. I'm doing additional stickers for this and collector pins. And if we hit $4,000 in this campaign, we will add in 4 additional pages from our side story called Mr. Wizard and Friends, which is a story that takes place within the Crit universe. It is a pop culture TV show that occurs. It's actually another D&D campaign that we played that I thought would be funny, and it's even more over the top than this is. And as a description, people ask me, well, how is that campaign? It ends with Justin Bieber is the devil, and he has taken over Australia, and it ends in a wrestling match in Australia, which is now the portal to hell. And Randy Savage comes up out of hell at the very end to save our heroes.
Justin Bieber, let me tell you something, brother.
Exactly. And it is a wrestling match in the portal to hell.
Let's go, dude.
And if you've ever been to Australia, you know why I use that as my setting for the portal for hell.
No, that is perfect. Well, I think we've come to the end of our episode, so let's go ahead and get up to a closer screen up with the last final touches for you got 17 days left to go. They say the last week is one of your heavy hitters, so you surely could hit that $4,000 goal. With that in mind, what would you say to anyone who's kind of just on the fence about backing your project? If you could give them anything to kind of just help pushing them over that edge.
I can tell you this: you won't read a more fun story than Crit. And if you're on the edge and you're like, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna like this series or not, the digital books are $1 on my website. If you want to check it out, you can invest $1 and see if it's worth your time. They all have their own storyline. You can pick up anywhere you want and not feel jarred or lost. You will get more information the earlier you start, but if you want to pick up just book 4 alone and say, hey, what is this like? It's $1 on our website. It's a quick investment to see if it's something that you might like, and then you can go to the Kickstarter. You can message me and say, hey, I'm on the fence. I'm the kind of guy that I might just even throw you a free copy of book 1.
Hey, well, it looks like we just got a pledge right now. It looks like you just pushed someone over the edge as we were speaking.
I did. So whoever just pledged.
Yeah, shout out Craig in the chat.
Yeah, Craig, thank you so much for coming in and checking the book out. I appreciate that.
Hell yeah, man.
The feedback I always get about Crit is it's a fun ride. And, we don't try to be anything more than that. So if you're looking just for a fun book to enjoy, we're the series. And a big thing I tell people, and I've talked to quite a few people in the indie community, they're always afraid of well, are you going to come back with more books? And even if we don't fund a campaign, I'll just continue drawing because I'm so dedicated anyway. And my friends tell everyone I'm the most hard-headed person you'll meet. So I'm going to continue shoving this stuff down people's throats,
Hey, I mean, it's your passion. The thing is, your passion's never going to take off unless you're the one that provides the fuel. Like, you have to be the one that pushes it. And I think you're doing an outstanding job. Now, with that being said, come to my favorite part of the show. I always love asking this one question. And that is, if you had to give any sort of advice to anyone who's new in the industry, who's kind of struggling getting off the ground with their comic or their idea, what sort of advice would you give them to help them push through it?
There's a few things. One, plan everything. I made the mistake in the beginning of just cold launching stuff. I launched my first Kickstarter campaign without even an Instagram account. And really don't be afraid to fail. You know, my first book, which I showed you the artwork for earlier, my wife looked at my first book that is currently unreleased and said, it's okay. I'd known the woman for 15 years. I had literally chased my wife for 11 years. I was friend zoned for 11 years. That's how infatuated I was with this woman. And to have her tell me after almost 4 years of marriage, the one thing I had put 3 months into was just...
You're probably like...
It was soul crushing.
You're like, okay.
So we failed a Kickstarter. My wife said it was just okay. I could have given up. The next day I just went on with it. And
hey, shout out to her though, because if it wasn't for her saying it was just okay, that might not have fueled you enough to want to make it better.
Exactly. Don't let anybody dissuade you from pursuing it. And the last piece of advice is, you don't know what kind of community the indie comics community is. There are, for every one person that might be a jerk, there are 10 people that are willing to help you. A lot of this community wants to see more books succeed because, and I will say it, I've had one person say that they saw me as competition, and I have a group of guys, the Savage Sandbox, which if you watch the Phalanx, that's our group. We're all independent creators that come together to help each other out. And we offer help to people even outside of our group. There was a message was sent to me that there is another group of creators that saw us as competition. And I messaged them and said, hey, we are no one's competition. My only competition is my book previous. That's it. I don't look at anybody else and say that. You might do $50,000 on Kickstarter. You could beat me in every number possible. I don't care, just as long as our community is doing well. And there are a lot of us like that just want to see everybody do well, because the better our community does, the more eyes that will go there, the more people will get away from reading the repetitive comic books that come out from Marvel and DC. Not knocking any of those titles. There are some good ones, but let's face it, there is more passion in the indie comic community. So lean on it. Learn as much as you can from your peers. Because we all have different stories.
You guys don't have that name brand. You don't have DC or Marvel behind, so you have to work harder to get noticed. And that's what's been a big part of what I've been doing with my show. I was a podcast where I just covered DC and Marvel comics and, talk about the news. And then I started off doing indie comic interviews and just learning about the passion, and everything that goes into it is so motivating. And it stuck with me, like giving, those without a voice or, a loud voice as someone like on DC, more of a platform to get their work out there. Because at the end of the day, getting your work out there is going to help sell it.
Yes.
You could have gold, but if no one knows you have gold, no one's going to read it.
That's the end goal, is just to get more and more eyes on our stuff and everybody's stuff. And that's the goal. So just don't be discouraged. It's a big world out there. People have asked me what I think a failure is, and a failure is the person who gives up. You're never a failure if you're still continuing on and pursuing something that you enjoy. It takes 5 years for a business to kick off. And that's one thing people kind of forget, is once you start collecting money for your hobby, it is now a business.
Yeah.
So think about that. Give yourself a 5-year window. If you're not taking off in 5 years, maybe you want to rethink some things. Don't give up. Todd McFarlane never gave up.
You just got to push harder, and sometimes you got to push harder in a different area.
The biggest inspiration I ever had was I watched a YouTube video where Todd McFarlane said he was working at Marvel. He was working on a book, he was drawing it, and he got a rejection letter from Marvel. And he went down to that floor and said, hey, you rejected me, but I work upstairs. Like, I'm currently working for your company and you rejected me. Like, imagine how that felt, right? So don't let anybody dissuade you from doing your dreams. I've pursued music, I've pursued comics, I've tried many different things just because I said, hey, I want to try it.
Hey, well, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to sit down and talk today. Big shout out to Jeff as well. I think Jeff was the one that introduced us together and set this up, the interview at least.
Yeah, Jeff's awesome. I love Jeff.
Yeah. So shout out to him. Anyone that's interested, be sure to check out Chris on all of his social media platforms. That is in the description of the YouTube link. Big shout out for Chris coming on to the show today with us and breaking down Crit as well. We always appreciate it. And for everyone that's watching, I hope you guys keep it geekly.